know there'll always be a honky-tonk in Texas. And from the dance floor you will hear twin fiddles play. At last call there'll be a jukebox in the corner, playing He Stopped Loving Her Today.
Well, hey there, Brent Adams, along with Curt Ryle. We're ready for another Road Stories here. And first off, our apologies to anybody who has just been sitting there on Facebook staring at Curt's picture for an hour here. Translating time zones is hard for me, so apologies, but we're underway here. And I tell you what, I've been waiting for 2 weeks here for some more Road Stories. Curt, how you been, man?
It's good. By the way, I love the introduction. That was awesome, man. Had me and stuttering Mel Tillis up there together. That's pretty cool.
We're just going to punch it up, adding stuff as we go along here. But, man, I'm excited here. Glad to be back with you here. This time last week we were together here and enjoyed the time in the studio here. That's a blast.
Yeah, man, we got a lot done, and it's been a busy week in the studio. And yeah, I've been looking forward to doing the Road Stories thing. You know, we're going to do this every other week. I think Steve Markward's on here. Wow. Yeah, how you like my jacket, Steve? I like this thing, man. I'm going to show you where to get one. No, it's you know, last week we were talking about me being on the road with Vern Gosden, and I'm going to cover a whole lot of ground. I'm probably going to bounce around on these stories from week to week, you know, and I may go back to the Vern Gosden there, but tonight I want to just talk about, you know, I wanted to get off the road so bad with Vern, so I'm going to hit on that.
Well, I tell you what, we're sitting at your feet with bated breath.
I appreciate you showing that picture of me with Vern Gosden there. You know, this is such a cool picture. This was taken at Buck Gerald's studio in Hendersonville, Tennessee. And the little girl that's there is a girl from Japan. She was a foreign exchange student, and she had just come to America for her first time. And she was, man, this girl had such a good time because she got to meet all these big stars and stuff. And so she even bought those jackets that we're wearing, those USA jackets. She went out and bought those and paid for them. And that was cool. That was a fun day right there.
I tell you what I love about it, business in the front and party in the back here, man. Love the mullet.
Yeah, man, I had the mullet. That was back, you know, that's going back some time, man. What, maybe in the 90s, so it was still cool to do that. Billy Ray made that popular, you know.
And I digress here, man. You were talking about Vern Gosden here, and I know touring's a grind, man, and you did that with Vern for 5 years.
Yeah, man, it was a rough 5 years. I mean, you know, we were on the road. He was actually at the peak of his career. He had just come out with the Chiseled and Stone album, and that tour, we were out there about 250 days a year, and it just started really taking its toll. And I just wanted to get off the road. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about this because, you know, I think it was probably around March of 1990, somewhere right in there. We got home from a tour, and I was exhausted, and so the next morning, you know, I went into the office, the publishing company I wrote for, which was owned by Mel Tillis, and I knew I needed to talk to Mel and try to get myself off the road. So he was there that day, and I told him, I said, Mel, I said, we got to go upstairs and talk. I said, man, there's some things I need to talk to you about. And he said, well, let's go up to my office. So we went up to his office, and of course, you know, Mel, you couldn't have a conversation with him without first listening to one of his stories. And he wanted to tell me about the story about when he was on the road. And he said, you know, they were booked in this hotel, and he said he took a shower, and he stepped out of the shower, and he realized there weren't any towels there. So he decided he didn't know what to do. He's just dripping wet. So he was looking for the towels. He opened the door and saw that the towels were sitting outside the door. So he went out to get the towels, and when he did, the door shut behind him, and he was standing there totally naked. And he's telling me the story, and he said, I didn't even think to put on one of them towels. He said, I heard the elevator stop, and he said, I just took off running. And so he's running down the hall butt naked, and he finds this door, and he just opens this door, and it was like some kind of a linen closet or something. And he said that the door opened, and he said those people getting off the elevator saw him running inside there, and he could hear them talking, and he heard this woman say, honey, somebody went in that door right there. He said, I don't know, we better check on him. And she opened the door, and there stood Mel. He didn't have nothing on. He was just totally naked. And she said, oh my God, honey, look, it's Merle Haggard. And Mel said, well, you caught me without any clothes on because I got out of the shower, but I'll sign an autograph for you. And boy, she reached in her purse and pulled out something. He signed Merle Haggard on it and sent her on his way. So I had to hear that story before. You never knew what Mel was going to come out with. And some things on here I can't even talk about, but I'll never forget that morning. I told him, I said, Mel, I said, I've been on the road, and I said, things are not going well out there. I said, man, I don't have time to write songs. I don't have time to do anything. It's just a big free for all with all the musicians on this bus. And he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, I want to quit working on the road, and I want to get off of it, and I want to stay in town. And he said, well, you're a good enough musician. You could be doing recording sessions and make up extra money that way. And I said, yeah. And he said, I have a job here. He said, but I don't think it's something you could do. He said, my engineer just quit this morning, my audio engineer. And I looked at him and I said, really? You don't have an audio engineer? He said, no. I said, Mel, you need to hire me. I can do that job. He said, you telling me you know how to turn all them knobs and buttons and all that? He said, that thing, you know how to operate that? And I said, yeah, man, I can. I said, Mel, I promise you, I'll make you sound better than you've ever sounded in your life. I said, you just need to hire me to do this job, man. I can do this. I said, I want to do this job. And he said, well, are you sure? And I said, yeah, I'm sure I can do it. I can do this. I said, he said, okay. He said, I'm going to hire you to do it. He said, but I'm going out on the road for 2 weeks. And he said, when I come back, he said, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to record a 40-song gospel album. And he said, and you better be able to handle that. And I said, oh, man, no worries about that. I said, I'm just going to get down here and just, give me a couple weeks to get comfortable in the room. And I said, don't worry about it. I said, it'll go great. So anyway, he left, and so I went down to the studio, and Brett, I got to tell you, man, this console was probably, oh my God, it was probably, it just went from wall to wall. It was like 100 feet long, and it literally looked like I was standing in the cockpit of the biggest jet airliner in the world. And I started having this panic attack because I didn't know how to operate any of it. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know the first thing about it. I mean, I've been in studios as a musician, but never had I been on that side of the glass and have to operate all that. And I sat down and I thought, what in the hell did I just get myself into? And I thought, man, I got to do something. I got to do this really quick. And so I got on the phone and I called this friend of mine. That studio that we were standing in, and that picture that you showed was the very guy that I called. And his name was Buck. And I called him. I said, Buck, that studio right there. And I called him. I said, Buck, I said, I got a serious problem. And I started telling him what I had done and how I had gotten this job, working in that studio. And Buck, he said, he started laughing. He said, are you just stupid? And I said, well, I got 2 weeks to learn. He said, I went to college for 4 years to learn that. He said, you're telling me you want to learn it in 2 weeks? He said, it's not possible. He said, you're not going to be able to make this happen. He said, you need to come clean with this. And I said, no, man, I'm going to do this. I know I can do it. I said, I have an advantage over you. I said, Buck, I'm a musician. I hear things that you don't hear. And I said, I know what stuff sounds right. I just got to learn how to do all the stuff. Man, he laughed at me and he just said, you have cojones the size of Manhattan. And he yeah, there it is. And the funny thing is, man, I told him, I said, Buck, I'll pay you if you'll just please spend 2 weeks with me in here, spend 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'll pay you whatever you're making plus, whatever you want. And, he reluctantly, he didn't want to do it. I could tell he didn't want to do it. And, but he told me, he said, look, he said, we'll give this a shot and we'll see what happens. So what I did was I went out and bought a couple of cameras, video cameras. We didn't have cell phones in those days. And so, I bought a couple of video cameras, put them up in the, strategic places where when he was teaching me, I would be able to go back to that. And every night I would go back to it and, go over what I had learned that day. But it was really crazy, man, because, I didn't know anything about, tape. Back in those days, we didn't have digital recording. We had 2-inch analog tape. And I had to learn how to splice this tape and how to, and I had to learn about what compressors do. Compressors are, I didn't even know what the hell a compressor was, I just knew there was a compressor on every channel, and you had to know how to use those things properly or you would destroy a recording. So, man, I tried to just soak up as much of it as I could. And, it was, I would have to say it was probably the stupidest thing I ever did, but I had gotten into it so deep, I just couldn't get out, and I didn't know what else to do. And that's how desperate I was to get off the road.
Man, I'll tell you, I've got anxiety just listening to this story.
Well, you've been in studios, Brent. You've been in my studio here, and I'm here to tell you, this studio here is pretty complex. But listen, the consoles today, they have made them small and made them much more accessible to smaller rooms. Back then, these consoles were huge, man. This thing, and it was scary and it was intimidating to look at it. And so I thought, well, after about, I don't know, 5 or 6 days, I told Buck, I said, man, I said, I need to get some musicians in here and record. And he goes, man, you got a lot to learn. And I said, well, look, this is the best way for me to do it. So what I did was I called Vern's band, who I had been working with all these years. And I told the guys, I said, man, y'all come in and record. I said, you'll get free recordings. Anybody who's written any songs, you want to record them. I said, it's going to be free. I just want the experience of recording them. So yeah, there were 2 or 3 of those guys. They wanted to do that. So we brought the whole band in, and, I'll never forget the very first recording. I had everything set. I got the guys in there, got them all set up, and had the drummer play, and I was tweaking on the drums. Buck standing there watching me, and he goes, hey, man, you got those drums sounding good, And so he was kind of, helping me get some confidence. But, he told me, he said, really and truly, what you're doing with those drums are amazing. He said, that kick drum sounds fabulous. So here I'm thinking, okay, I can handle this thing. And so got everything set. The guys were ready, and I said, okay, we're rolling, guys. Let's just go. And so I hit the red button, and they counted off the song, and we did the song. Went all the way through it. Everything looked good, sounded good. And I said, okay. I said, what do we do? And Buck said, ask anybody if they've got anything to fix. So I said, anybody out there got anything they want to fix? The bass player goes, yeah, I need to go back to the second verse and fix the first 2 bars. I said, okay. So I had been making numbers. I knew exactly how to get back there as quickly as you could on 2-inch tape. So I went back and I said, okay, are you ready? He goes, yeah. So I just hit record. And when I did, I wiped out the whole band. I recorded over everything I had just done. And I sat there for a minute and I went, what happened? Buck said, well, you didn't disarm all the tracks. He said, you have to disarm everybody except the bass if you're going to punch the bass. And I said, why did you stand there and let me do that? He said, because that's how you learn. And so they had to go back, record the song again, but I never, ever made that mistake again.
Yeah.
When you make a big mistake like that, you learn from that.
There was no Control Z back in those days, was there? No backing up.
No, and you know what else, Brent? Today, these studios today, everything's pretty digital. And, I don't particularly like digital recording. I still like analog recording, and I have an analog system, but it's not tape. But the editing is still very, very digital. And today we have undo buttons.
Right.
You know, you make a mistake, you erase something, you just undo and you've got it back just like that. In fact, you can undo 9 times,
Right.
you know, so it's amazing uh, what we have today, but we didn't have that back then. And you had to really be good at what you were doing back then on 2-inch tape, because one mistake and I would have been fired. You know, if I had done that on a Mel Tillis record, I would have been fired for that, and I would have deserved it. You know, so I learned a lot from doing that recording with those guys.
Well, and it's fresh on my mind because I was just in the studio with you last week, and to watch you work is a thing of beauty, man. You're so quick on going back and getting those takes and making the fixes and stuff. So you're starting to catch on.
You know what's funny, man, is I ended up doing that for about 7 years, and Mel never knew. He never knew the story that I'm telling right now. He never knew that I didn't know what I was doing. What Mel did, he was smart. The day before Mel was to come back into town, he called Buddy Cannon, who used to work at our publishing company. There's Buddy right there with George Jones. Buddy was one of the guys. I really love this guy. He's on the left, and of course George's on the right. But yeah, Buddy. Mel called Buddy and said, "Hey, why don't you take somebody down there and record at the studio with Curt, and let's see how he's doing in there." And so Buddy actually called me. He had a girl that they had just signed to Mercury Records. Her name was Danielle Alexander. I'm pretty sure that's right. He had this girl. I remember her. She was a pretty girl. She wore glasses, and I don't know that she ever had a hit record. I don't really know whatever happened to her, but her name was Danielle Alexander. And Buddy called me and he said, "Hey, Mel wants me to come in and record a few songs on Danielle Alexander with her band." And this was the day before he was to come in, and I thought, you know what, I think I can handle this. So I said, "Okay, bring them in." So she brings in her band, and she had a really, really good band, man. I mean, they were like studio musicians. They were really good. And so I recorded about 3 or 4 songs on her. And when we got finished, I played them back for Buddy, and he called Mel on the phone, and he said, "Man, you got one of the best studio engineers I've ever been around." And Mel was like, "Wow, that's exactly what I wanted to hear." And I think he was testing me. I'm sure he was. And Buddy was somebody that was very highly respected, and he still is. You know, he produced Sammy Kershaw. He produced a lot of people. I think he produced some stuff on George.
A lot of Willie Nelson, Kenny Chesney.
Yeah. Tell me more. Anything more you know about? I will tell you this about Buddy. He produced an album on me when I was like 28 years old. And Mel thought I needed to have a recording contract. And that's another Road Stories episode that we will dive into. But he actually had Buddy go in and produce an album on me. And man, it was really good, man. And that's when I really learned how to work with artists, was by watching him, how he handled me. And I thought, okay, this is the way this is supposed to be done. You know, nothing goes out of the studio unless it's absolutely perfect. And he really sat there and spent the time with me. If there was one little thing that wasn't perfectly in tune, I had to redo it. And so I learned a lot from Buddy Cannon. He was a great mentor.
Absolutely. That's one of those guys, if you could learn from anybody in the business, that'd be the one to learn from for sure.
Yeah. And there was another guy that I had worked a lot with in Dallas, Texas, who was a great engineer. His name was Jerry Abbott. And Jerry Abbott was the father of the heavy metal band Pantera.
Ah, Dimebag Darrell Abbott.
Yes, sir. He was Dimebag's father, and he was Vinny's father. So those two guys were brothers in that band. And I learned an awful lot from Jerry,
nice.
You know, who was a great engineer too. But yeah, it was pretty interesting. So, you know, Mel, he told me, he said, "I want to come back." He said, he called me and he said, "I'll be there tomorrow." He said, "These are the people I want you to call, and I want you to hire these people, and let's set up a recording session." And so I was a little surprised at the musicians that I was going to be working with, a little scared, because he had Buddy Emmons. He said, "I want you to call Buddy Emmons, who was the greatest steel guitar player, no doubt. He was the best steel guitar player in Nashville." And he started naming off these names. Oh my gosh, the Jordanaires who worked with Elvis Presley. he wanted them on this album. They were so amazing in the studio, you know, with all these parts that they would do. And he told me, he said, get the Jordanaires in here. He said, I want Buddy Spiker on fiddle. I want Owen Hill on drums. Owen Hill was the drummer with Leonard Skinner. He also played with KT Oslin. So all these names, I'm writing all these things down that he's telling me to hire these people. And so we, you know, I'm sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, I've been doing this 2 weeks and I'm getting ready to go into it with some of the biggest musicians and singers in the world. And wow, it was really intimidating. It was frightening. Because I was still scared. I knew that I had a lot to learn. But you know, it's funny, Brent. You know, I felt pretty comfortable in there actually. After about the third song, and this is pretty funny because you know Mel, as long as he had been recording and been in the studios and doing what he did, you know, you would think he would know better than what he was about to do. But when he came in, here we had 10 musicians in the studio. The Jordanaires are all in there, hovered around microphones. And so Mel comes in, we record one song. And this whole album is nothing but gospel music. And I think we did Peace in the Valley and all of these great old hymns that he wanted to do. And we did one song. And Mel said, play that song back for me. And so I played it back and let him hear it. And he said, I want you to get everybody out of the studio so I can go in there and sing it now. So I thought about that, and I thought, I know this is not a good idea, but how do I argue with Mel Tillis, right? So I went out and told all the musicians, I said, guys, just go out into the waiting room and wait. Mel wants to put a vocal on this thing. And those guys looked at me and said, Curt, we're on the clock. You know, I mean, he's paying us like $600 an hour a piece. And I said, I know, but guys, this is what he wants to do. So let's just do it. And so I went back in the studio. It was just Mel and myself. And he went in there and he sang the song about 4 or 5 times. And I told him, I said, I'll comp this, Mel. We'll get a great vocal out of it. And he said, well, I want to do this. And I said, you know, Mel, this is a really bad idea. I said, because you've got all these musicians out here. You're paying them $600 an hour on a minimum. Some of them are even more than that. And I said, these guys are booked to come in here for 3 hours and do as many songs in 3 hours as they can do. And I said, what we really should do is try to get as many songs as we can to save you money. And I said, you and I could come in and do these vocals after they're gone. And we can spend as much time in here as we want to do it. And I said, this is going to end up costing you a couple of $1 million at this pace we're going. He said, well, I just made 15 million in Branson. And I looked at him and I said, well, I'm going to leave it up to you, Mel. If this is how you want to do it, this is how we do it. But I'm strongly advising you not to do this. After about 2 or 3 hours, his business manager came in, and I kind of explained to him, and he said, let me talk to him. And so he goes in and he gets it all straightened out. And we ended up, it still took us, oh my gosh, to do 40 songs. Brent, I think that was the most money I ever made in 1 year in my life, you know, as a musician, because I'm playing on this stuff too. And it was huge. These musicians probably made $30,000-$40,000 just on this one album. And but what a great album it turned out to be. And you know, I was really happy to have gotten to do that for my very first real project, you know.
So do you remember the name of that album, and where can folks go and find it if they want to hear it?
Oh, they can find it. And you know, here's the funny thing about that album. It's called Beyond the Sunset. Beyond the Sunset. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe this is the only album that Mel ever did that went platinum. He had gold albums one after another. He had so many, but he had never had a platinum album. And I really think one of the main reasons that this thing went platinum was because he had that theater in Branson. Right. And I guarantee you, he sold 1 million records just right there in that theater. So it was truly the highest selling album he had ever done. And I go back and listen to it, and it's funny because this is the very first project I had ever engineered in my life, and you know, it's not bad. It's not bad. I'm pretty pretty still happy to hear it, when I listen to it.
It's the ultimate fake it till you make it story.
Yeah, and it was pretty cool doing it. I learned one thing I learned from it was punching. When I would sit there and punch in and out when I was doing vocals, and I got absolutely so quick at it that I could punch a word in the middle of a line. If the line was perfect and there was one word out of tune, I could punch that word, and that's kind of how I got to where I'm at today. Of course, now I've been doing this, my gosh, for 30 something years. And so it's, I feel very, very at ease in the studio now. And, but back then it was, working with 2-inch tape and working with those big artists like that. It was pretty scary.
One thing that we got to circle back around a little bit and talk about in that while you were woodshedding with Buck there was a time when you were actually kind of like a football practice. You were filming what was going on for the day and then going back and breaking down the film.
That's exactly right. And if I hadn't done that, I don't think I could have pulled this thing off, because I'd go back what I did when Buck would leave. To be honest with you, there were a lot of times I never went home. I stayed in that studio, and I would just watch those tapes, and then I would go and I would reenact everything that I had done, and I would do it over and over and over. I would go to the track and I would say, okay, I got to add this much compression and no more than that. And it was one of those things where having those cameras there and being in the studio, it was really like having almost a month, because I could go back and reenact all those parts. And it was just, thank God it happened, that it turned out well. It could have really been a nightmare. It could have backfired on me big time.
Well, for somebody who learned to play steel guitar in 2 weeks, and now you got this, I'm curious to know what else is out there that you kind of put the cart before the horse on here.
Well, I told Steve Markworth, now I'm going to get into something here I probably shouldn't get into, but I told Steve Markworth, I said, I'm going to make you sound better than you've ever sounded. And I knew I was lying when I said it, but I did it. I'm just kidding, Steve. I know Steve's on here watching. Steve is actually, Steve is one of the better singers I've ever had in the studio, Brent. I got to be honest with you. This guy's got some pipes, man.
He does.
And he sings in tune very well. And he mentioned something a while ago. I'm reading some of these things. We got a lot of people in here right now. And, we got, my gosh, there's a lot of people in here. But yeah, Steve said something a while ago. He said, you didn't have auto tune back in those days. And boy, he hits on something really, really important, Brent, because today, I can bring a singer in the studio, and through technology, I can make him sound good, even if he's terrible. I can't make him sound great, but I can make him sound in tune.
Right.
And, and I've had to do this now for probably the last 20 years since we've had the digital format. Auto tuning has become, I think in some ways it's hurt country music and hurt all kinds of music, because now they could take somebody and they can go, well, this guy looks really good, or this girl, she looks great. She might not be the best singer, but with technology, we can make her sound better than she does. And I kind of think that it's happened like that. And I believe I believe it's kind of set us back in some ways.
All right.
I think great talent gets overlooked. That's right.
Well, and a lot of those people get exposed when they actually go out on a stage and have to perform live. But even in the bigger tours now, a lot of that stuff is all tracked. So basically, all you're getting is a bunch of lip syncing to those doctored up tracks anyway.
That's exactly right. And that's exactly why they're doing that, is because they don't have the ability to walk on stage and sing in tune. Now, I will tell you this, there are a few artists out there, I won't name any names, but there are a few artists out there that actually use an auto-tuning device on stage, one very similar to what I have here in this recording studio. And they go out there on stage and they've got this tuner set, but it'll only do so much.
Right.
If you get off too far, it'll take you to another key,
Right.
and then you really suck, you're really gonna sound bad. I think you're right. I think probably more and more these days, a lot of these artists are lip syncing. I won't let my artists do that. I won't do it, Brent. Most of my artists are very, very talented singers, and they can walk on stage and they're capable of doing it. You know, I'm not going to sign anybody to my label that they can't sing.
Right.
And but a lot of labels do it, and I can understand why they do it. These people are very marketable.
Right.
You know, you bring in somebody that looks like $1 million and they can sing just okay, but you've got that eye candy there, you know, for the public and the videos and all that stuff. I can understand why they do it.
Absolutely. Well, I tell you what, we do have a lot of people on here. Unfortunately, through the platform that's coming through, we can't identify a lot of them here. But thank you.
Hey, how can we fix that? You're right. A lot of people, I can see JD on Cat is on here. That of course is our friend, and but a lot of these guys, it just says fake Facebook user and there's no picture.
Right.
How do we fix that, Brand?
We'll have to go back and look at the permissions for these pages here, and also if you're seeing this and it gives you a pop-up that offers to allow use of your name and photo with this, so we can see your comments, please click yes on that, so we can see who's.
Otherwise, we don't know who you are. I see people talking to me. Obviously, they know me, but they don't. But I can't see who they are. I see Peggy York. Peggy York is on here with her picture. I know Peggy, and Steve, of course. But most of them just says Facebook user. So I would love to be able to get your pictures on here where we can actually talk directly to you.
Absolutely. We see that your artist Jasmine McDonald is on here with her grandparents Charlie and Donna. And just a quick plug here, you can catch her new single Barroom Blues on episode 72 of the Tractors and Troubadours podcast, which is available right now, ruralstrongmedia.com or wherever you get your podcast. Great tune, man.
She wrote that by herself. Did you know that?
Yes, great
She's
tune.
An amazing writer, man. She's really, really good. She's one of the best writers on this label, without a doubt. And she wrote Autumn Moon, which was her last single. And of course, we do have a song coming out on Jasmine in the near future, Brent. That's it's very cool for anyone who's watched the series Yellowstone. You know, John Castleberry and myself wrote a song for Jasmine, and it's called The Train Station. And I'm not going to give away too much here because there's a cool video coming out on this. You guys got to see this video. It's amazing. And, you know, the cool thing is it's about this boy who's cheating on her. And so she's going to take him to the train station. Nobody's going to know what that means unless they watch the Yellowstone series. So if you haven't watched the Yellowstone series, guys, go out there and watch it. This song is going to be really cool when it comes out.
Absolutely. Well, I tell you what, man, fascinating half hour here. I'm always amazed at the stories that you put out there and what all you've been into.
Brent, I really appreciate you hosting this thing. We're going to have some good times out here. We're going to do this every other week, two Mondays a month, and you'll be on here with me, I'm assuming, and we'll be doing this thing. And there's going to be some times when I talk about some of these things that it's going to be pretty crazy. People are going to go, I just can't believe this really happened. But I'm trying to keep it somewhat sane right now, even though what I just told you was pretty stupid on my part. It was pretty insane. But, you know, it worked out. If I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now.
Absolutely.
And I don't think I would have ever come off the road. And that's what got me into the recording studios, was doing that. And so I'm thankful that Mel Tillis gave me an opportunity to do this.
Beautiful stuff. Well, Curt, we appreciate you taking the time to share all this stuff, and we certainly appreciate everybody who's checked in today. A lot of great folks on here, and we certainly thank you. We'll be back week after next Monday. So not next Monday, the following Monday, 7 o'clock Central Time. I'll put that in my gray matter, so I make sure that we get that set up right. 7 o'clock Central. And we hope you come back and join us for more of Curt's Road Stories.
Thank you.
Oh, there'll always be a honky-tonk in Texas. And from the dance floor you will hear twin fiddles play. And last call there'll be a jukebox in the corner.